Nikki here. I've got my little peepers on today, and I wanted to take a minute and talk with you guys about how you know when something isn't for you. Now, this could be something like a job, a social situation, or even therapy. And I think so many times we just kind of instinctively know that something isn't working for us, but we push ourselves to stay in these unhealthy situations because oftentimes we think it's our fault for not really being able to adapt. Now, the truth is that sometimes as humans, we're not as open minded as we could or should be, which makes sense because really looking at things from a new perspective challenges your personal beliefs, and that in itself can feel really uncomfortable. So naturally, we tend to lean out or away from those kind of situations instead of leaning in and really working through our emotional discomfort. So, right now, I want to talk about how to really recognize when a situation isn't right for you and when you should let it go. So, there's a lot of times we instinctively know that the situation is bad, right? But even though it's super clear, we somehow try to convince ourselves that we are the ones that are being unreasonable and everything really is okay, even when it's not. And we make all the excuses in the world for what's going on instead of really honoring what our body and our intuition are actually telling us. So, in these cases, it can be difficult to walk away from something that you've invested a lot of time in. It feels like throwing away all of your hard work or your effort, right? If you're going to leave. And that's the type of thinking or the kind of thinking that leads people to stay in these really kind of like untenable situations way longer than they should. But here's the thing, the time that you've spent is gone, right? Like whether you stay or leave, putting yourself first is actually what really matters. So if something doesn't feel right, it's okay to walk away from that situation and find something that works better for you. So as an example, just because you've invested a great deal of time and energy to start a new career in like finance or teaching, or maybe even a hobby that you're super interested in, it doesn't mean you're not allowed to walk away after 6 months, 1 year, or even a couple weeks if you feel like it's really not working out for you. The amount of time that you've spent on something doesn't define whether or not you've learned what you needed in order to move on to the next stage of your life. Sometimes you're just done, and that's okay. You know, not everyone is meant to have long careers in certain jobs or stick with one hobby or one modality of something their whole life. So if you feel like you're one of those individuals, that's totally okay. What you learned is enough. And torturing yourself by continuing to show up in a space that's clearly letting you know it's time to move on really isn't going to be a good situation for anybody, right? So another reason that you might feel like maybe something isn't for you is if you're listening to programmed beliefs or outdated conditioning. And I think we all have this to a certain degree, right? There's a lot of pressure around the idea that once you pick something, you have to stick with it. And if you don't, it says something bad about you, right? But what if sticking with something is actually really damaging on a mental, emotional, or physical level, right? So suddenly the idea of like sticking with something doesn't really seem like such a valid concept anymore, does it? You know, sometimes there's not really a way to know something isn't for you until you go in there and give it a shot. I think something that doesn't really help you when you find yourself in a situation is also when you experience a lot of like pushback or resistance from people around you who just like they're encouraging you to try harder, give things a chance, lower your expectations, right? And so we start to second guess ourselves. But your experience is your experience, and that's valid no matter what it is. So I think it's important to trust your gut and stop listening to what everyone else around you is saying. I mean, you can take it into consideration, but your body knows where it feels safe and comfortable. So if this spot isn't it, find one that is. I think it's more than okay to change your mind if you feel like something isn't working for you. So another place that you might experience this showing up is when your excitement about trying something new doesn't match the reality of what that actually is, right? So whether it's a hobby, job, career, vacation, hanging out with a new social group, sometimes that like disparity you experience feels really disappointing. Now, of course, I would always recommend giving something like a few chances to see if your experience was maybe just like a fluke. But if you're still feeling really let down after like a reasonable effort, it's okay to change directions. whether that means walking away completely or finding a new place to show up that might be a better fit for you. All right, so another way you can tell if something isn't for you is when we look at different institutions we frequent. So many services like healthcare, therapy, workplace, education, they all really tend to follow this one-size-fits-all approach. Now, this can be an issue because it really doesn't accommodate individuals that have unique needs or that run differently than the majority of the population. And most people aren't really willing to make adjustments for a small part of the whole. So not being able to fit into a certain mold can be extremely frustrating, especially when you can't get like the assistance or services that you genuinely need as a result. So if you find yourself being pushed into situations and treatment that make you uncomfortable, don't be afraid to look for other systems or providers that are actually willing to work with you where you're at. They're out there, they're hard to find, but they are out there, so don't give up. And I think on this topic, I can give you a little bit like of a personal example. So I've always been like a really extremely sensitive person on all levels. And this has been really challenging for me, particularly in like medical or wellness spaces. So providers will use the same exact treatments for me as they do for everyone else. So, but the thing is, while they work well for most patients, I'm constantly experiencing like side effects or negative reactions that are kind of crazy and weird and confuse people. And what happens is like I get treated like I'm the problem because my body didn't do what the provider thought it should. So situations where things like this are happening are perfect examples of spaces that aren't really supportive. Now, how to know if something really isn't for you is something that's been a recurring theme for me lately. I've noticed it not just in my own experiences, but also with a lot of my clients and just other people I'm just kind of connecting with in different situations. And so it seems to particularly resonate with the collective consciousness at this moment. So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about and share it today, because I think so many individuals feel like they're being unreasonable or they're like at fault when they're just not listening to their intuition. So if you find yourself in a similar situation, please work on learning how to trust yourself. You know when something isn't working, even if other people are like insisting it is, right? So that's also another reason too why I think having a good connection with yourself is really important, right? Like you have to learn to trust yourself to make sure that you stay in alignment and stay in the spaces that are really beneficial for you. So those are some spaces that you can look into, or some situations you can look into to really help yourself identify whether or not something is for you or not for you. Now, if you've enjoyed this video or it's helped you in any way, please give me a little thumbs up or subscribe to my channel for more like-minded content. Now, if you're in need of some one-on-one guidance, I would absolutely love to work with you. Just reach out through my website if you would like to connect. Otherwise, until next time, I really hope that you can lean confidently into your intuition and into the guidance that Spirit is giving you. So I hope that you use it. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I hope that you have an absolutely beautiful day.